Katie Wu, ironically, only because we just talked to someone from the Bay Area. Katie Wu's a Bay Area native. And I thought, man, there was a great story a few weeks ago she did about her first year covering the Cardinals because it happened so suddenly. It just sort of happened out of nowhere. Very short time, she had to just basically pick up her life and move and start covering a team that she didn't know much about, even though she knows baseball. But when you're taking over a beat of an entire team, there's so much to learn, so many people to get to know, and it ain't easy, especially if, when the media access is limited and players don't know who you are. They're not going to give out their number so you can text them to ask a question. So she did, all things considered, did a really good job, and like her. So I like this thing today she did with The Athletic. And look, man, The Athletic's, I keep half expecting some attorney to email me and say, you must cease and desist. You're always, writing about or mentioning athletic stuff. And look, I worked for them and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I have a lot of friends who work for them, so they probably cut me a break. But I also think people should subscribe to it because I do. Even when I was getting paid by them, I subscribed to it. I got a free subscription. I didn't care about it because they're great. Anyway, she was in charge of a fan survey, and we'll just go through some of these. A couple things really surprised me. But anyway, about 1,668 people responded, which actually is a lot for something like this. Okay, how would you rate the state of the franchise? The Cardinals fans said 76% said solid, and just under 7% said excellent. So I'm not sure what to make of the solid thing, because I'd have to maybe have a more specific definition of what solid means. Does that mean like, hey, they're solid, they're okay, or does it mean like solid? I don't know. But if you look at it this way, as Katie Wu did, you got about 84% of Cardinals fans who responded to this, gave them a favorable rating. I mean, I think that's kind of hard to do in sports. And we usually hear from a lot of, like on Twitter or whatever, they're really unhappy people. And so we assume there's a bunch of them out of there. I think a bunch of them out there, Jim, I think something like this, a survey like this, kind of is a good reminder that there are a lot of people who are pretty discerning, and while they're disappointed with some things, they from a big picture standpoint, they do appreciate what the Cardinals have done with a lot of winning for a long time.
Yeah, look, they're not the Reds. They're not, they're not the Pirates. Those two teams in this division, we consider probably similar market sizes, and they haven't won much of anything. And I know that's maybe oversimplifying it, because there are a lot of fans who go, oh, come on now. They do, Cardinals have a fan base, and they do, but part of that fan base continues to come out because they put a good product on the field. I think if the Reds ever started putting a good product on the field, they'd get fans back in the seats. But every time I watch a game there, Bernie, there's nobody there. So
yeah, it's a shame.
To the point, I would. You said it was 84%.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 76.5%. Yes, 76.5% said solid. 7% said excellent. There 15% said fair. I think they're better than fair
compared to what?
But again, but the ones that made me laugh. And granted, this is also important to recognize these numbers too. I mean, 1.5% said below average, and 0.2% said poor. Now, there's just simply no basis to call them below average or poor. And I rip the Cardinals a lot, but there's absolutely no basis for that.
No,
that's just pure foolishness. Anyway, next question: How would you rate the team's performance over the past decade? 67% solid, 11+% said excellent. 20% said fair, 1.7 below average.
Below average, huh?
Yeah. I think they've made the playoffs pretty, the last decade, I think that would entail 2011, or it's on the periphery. So you got a World Series, 2 pennants, been in the playoffs 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 19, 20, 21. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 playoff seasons, a World Series and 2 NL pennants. Yeah, that would fit my definition of they're fair.
Okay.
Fair. So
you brought that up, and it reminded me. I saw a tweet, and I had to go find it. It was put out, I think it was like last week sometime. It put down what the standings would be based on record for all Major League teams since 2010. In the National League, the only team with more victories than the Cardinals would be the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And overall, Major League Baseball, the only team with more wins than the Cardinals overall would be the Dodgers and the Yankees. That's it. More than the Red Sox, the Rays, all the other teams in Major League Baseball, even the Giants, who are very good over that span.
Yeah, that actually goes back to all the way to 2000. It's pretty amazing when you look at it when you stretch it out even over a longer period of time. How confident are you the Cardinals will continue to be a competitive franchise? 55% is very confident, 38% somewhat confident. I mean, if the DeWitts own it, given their track record, which is a very real thing that we can rely on for as an indicator of the future, I would, I'm a little surprised that number for very confident is not higher, but it's still a positive response, especially when you put the somewhat confident. But maybe people think they're going to sell because Mike Shannon blurted something out. I don't know. How confident are you the Cardinals will be a World Series contenders in the next 3 years? 41%. I'm rounding these off. 41%. Somewhat confident. 17%. Very confident. There's about a quarter of the people said they're unsure. There's not very confident, 16%, not confident at all, 2+%. I think that's about right. If you look at the somewhat confident and very confident, I mean I think that's a reasonable amount of confidence. But hey, they haven't been in the World Series since 2013, and the years are going by a little bit. I don't get into this thing, and I know the Post-Dispatch loves to just like perpetuate this stuff. Well, they haven't been in a World Series since 2011. As if this is like a 40-year drought or something. I just like, my goodness, it's just really, really kind of silly. Anyway, but yeah, as the years go by, that will become more of an issue, right? Mm-hmm. We've been through that. I mean, the Cardinals in '82.
Yes,
it took a long time for the Cardinals to get back to not get back to a World Series, but to win a World Series. And as the years go by, it becomes more of an issue. But I'm just kind of laugh at that. People some people in the media portray this as if this has been some long, embarrassing, decades long drought. I think, all you can do is get to the playoffs consistently and give yourself chances. They've done that. They can do more to have a team more capable of going deep in the playoffs. That's my gripe. I would never belittle their success as too many people do. Just like dismissing this, that we should say, well, that's good to make the playoffs. Look at how many times. Well, I don't want to hear about that. Because apparently I've missed those rules changes where you can automatically advance to the World Series. You don't have to play it. You don't have to even make the postseason. So anyway, but where I get off that train is this idea that I agree with the critics very much so that the Cardinals sit there and just like I always talk about the calibrating Cardinals, and it's like, well, how do we get to 90 wins? That's our goal. We got to get to 90 wins. No, you should get to 95 plus wins, but more than that, just have a roster that is more capable. There's no guarantees, but a roster that is much more capable of getting you deeper into the playoffs because they have not had, the Cardinals, much postseason success for quite a while. It's getting a little too long, really.
Yeah, I'm there with you in terms of I kind of think they could do more to make the team better, go an extra step, whether it's go get an extra bat for the lineup, or maybe it's another arm. I get frustrated from my standpoint when it's we're going to go from within and we're going to give this. No, how about just go get yourself a difference making bat, and that frustrates me. I get that fans get frustrated, like you were just pointing out the difference in years or the length of years, but to realistically sit there and think, well, we should win every 5 years. That's not realistic.
It's just stupid.
And I just mentioned a few minutes ago about the Dodgers have the best record since 2010. Well, they only won one World Series, people, and they hadn't won one since '88. It's not easy to do.
And look at all the billions and billions they've spent. All right, this stuff I think is interesting because we hear a lot of hollering about Mozeliak, and I assume that he's quite unpopular just because the noise level is pretty loud, and it seems to be coming from more and more people. But when Katie Wu posed the question, how would you rate the job John Mozeliak has done in his tenure as president of baseball operations? 14% said excellent, and 52.5% said solid. So that's a favorable rating, I guess, is the way to put it. Of what are we talking about? 66% or so. And what I'm really surprised is that the negative numbers aren't higher. And I'm not saying they should be, because I actually defend his body of work. But I keep pushing him to do what we just talked about. Just be a little more aggressive. Get a deeper team together.
Right.
And then you can maybe win playoff rounds and get back to a World Series. But anyway, I was surprised that the negatives were not that high. 5% said below average and 2% said poor. Wouldn't you think those numbers would have been higher given all the guff that he takes?
Yes, I would have, especially this past season. Look, they finished extremely strong, but what happened in the middle of the year, I think, would be right in people's mind that, you kind of just lucked in. This is the perception. You kind of lucked into those pitchers that you picked up being successful. Otherwise, what you gave us last year was below average by Cardinal standards. That's what I would think most fans would say about the job he did, especially last year, and that would be right there in front of their minds.
Now, this is the one that has me scratching my head, because I think the responses so far going down the line, I mean, I think they've been very reasonable. And, there's a silly faction that's going to, say that, the Cardinals have done a poor job or whatever, that kind of thing. But people have been pretty fair in their responses. Now, this is the one that, I don't really understand. How would you rate the job Bill DeWitt Jr. has done in his tenure as owner? And during his tenure as owner, they've been one of the most successful franchises in Major League Baseball, and that's not an opinion, it's a fact. And I could go pull up my records and read all the stuff to you. And then since 2000, it's been really amazing. And it's only really the Dodgers and the Yankees who have competed with them in terms of year-in, year-out excellence. You got a new stadium that the Cardinals and their Bill DeWitt and his partners paid for, basically funded about 78, nearly 80% of it. I don't get it. 43% said solid. 35% did say excellent, but to me, there should be more of a higher percentage for excellent, and maybe a little lesser percentage of solid, because I really don't know what people expect he should do before they would say, he's really he frustrates me, but really, it's his term in office has been excellent, because it has been. And so, it has been. In fact, this is the most successful ownership, in my opinion, in Cardinals history as far as sustained success. I think it's been, fairly phenomenal. And obviously, going by these numbers, people take it for granted. And maybe not as much as I say, because after all, the attendance has been great, and that's a big part of the success of the fans have come through. But, how can 18% say fair? You're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in baseball over a 25-year period, And how does that compute to fair? 4% say below average, and poor is just under 1%. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
I agree with you 100% on that one. I would give him an A+, and I know that would be unpopular with a lot of people. But look, I agree with you on this. It's the most successful ownership that the franchise has ever had. Now, I can only pretty much relate to the AB years and the DeWitt years myself in terms of what I've seen. But I put it like this: the Anheuser-Busch years were good, but the 70s were not very good, especially late 70s. This ownership group, the DeWitts, have not had anything that has come close to that.
Right.
And I think you gotta, if you really want to look at it honestly, you gotta evaluate it that way and go, yeah, this team has been legitimate contender, and at worst, just a little bit below 500 every year. And that's a rare occasion that they've been a little bit or at 500, especially since 2000. I mean, you just got to go, that's an A+.
I think people. I think there's been kind of people blanked out some stuff in their minds. Like if you look at, when Whitey Herzog got fed up and left, and you look at that time, 87 was the last time they made the postseason with Whitey, and you look at that time between 1988 and through 1995. I mean, the Cardinals were terrible. And then DeWitt and his partners took over, and the Cardinals, immediately get to the NLCS because they spent money and they brought in stars. And that's one of the things. Bill DeWitt, there's always room to do more. And I repeat, I get frustrated about some things. But as an owner who takes a great interest in the baseball side of things, my goodness, this guy was way ahead of the curve among ownership anyway, in putting in a different way of drafting and developing players and scouting players and getting better value for players. And not infallible, no, but he hired Jeff Luhnow, and everyone thought he was crazy. And what are you bringing some financial Wharton business school guy coming in here, And, well, Bill DeWitt saw the future, and he was absolutely right. And Luhnow did a great job of incorporating it all, and the Cardinals got even better. And they got even better by being more efficient and having more depth. And so the irony, of course, is that when Luhnow moved on to Houston before the scandal, it's just like, I can't believe DeWitt let this guy go. They were trashing DeWitt when he hired him, and then I'm trashing him because Luhnow wanted to be a general manager somewhere else. But if you just look at where they are, I mean, they've been in the postseason 16 times in 26 years. And that would only be second to Atlanta in the National League since 1996. And the Cardinals are, the last 26 years, they're third in the National League in regular season winning percentage. Since the turn of the century, they've made 15 out of 22 postseasons. The most by and National League team. So they made the postseason more times than anybody in the National League since 2000. And the only other team that has done that more often is the Yankees, one more time than the Cardinals. They have the best regular season winning percentage in the National League since the start of 2000, second overall in the majors to the Yankees. The Cardinals are in the playoffs 8 times in the last 11 years, and the last 11 years have only the Dodgers with 9 have competed in more postseasons, and the Yankees, I think, tied the Cardinals with 8 postseason trips since 2011. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. There's a bunch of other things. If you look in the division, all right, then since Bill DeWitt took over in 1996, you just look at the division. Cardinals 16 times to the playoffs. Cubs 8, Brewers 6, Reds 4, Pirates 3. And he's also they've brought in stars, man. Arenado, Goldie, just McGuire, and traded for Jim Edmonds, drafted and developed Pujols and Molina, and I mean I could go. There's more and more and more. The Cardinals have always had stars under DeWitt. I mean, really, Scott Rowland,
yeah,
like Hall of Fame caliber players or Hall of Fame literally players. So, Yeah, 4 NL pennants, 2 World Series. We've gotten to the NLCS 11 times under DeWitt. So, pardon me, I just have a very difficult time kind of understanding why, there's a pretty healthy percentage of people think it's, fair, or just,
yeah, it was all right.
Fair.
Take it or leave it.
That's the personification of a spoiled fan base. That element.
Yeah.
A great many other fans, of course, understand that it's been, even with some irritations, it's been a hell of a run. But it just shows some people just lack perspective entirely. There is no way to say anything bad overall in a meaningful, substantive way about Bill DeWitt's ownership. It doesn't pass the smell test when people are trying to make the case that this has been some some failure or huge disappointment, or it's only fair, No, I rejected. That's asinine.
Agree with you on that one.
A couple more things real quick. I actually thought that there was a question about Ali Marmol. What do you think of him? And then that's a tough one because no one really knows entirely, what to think, because he is I can tell you he's a very sharp guy, and I can tell you that the Cardinals have been grooming him for this job for a very long time. And he's impressed everyone in the organization. But the thing of it is, once you become the manager, your relationship with the players changes. You're not the guy that they're running to because they're mad at Matheny or they're mad at Schilt. Now they're going to be getting mad at you because you make the decision. So he's going to have to handle that. He's never been a media guy up front and center. It's a huge part of the job. No one really knows what to expect there other than, an assumption that he'll be cooperative and try to communicate with fans through the media. There's some questions, of course, about, all right, how far is he going to go with some of the advanced metric stuff? I don't think he's going to go crazy with it, and I think a lot of the things that he's going to do actually should be done, and they're actually quite normal, like platoons, for example. But no, until he actually is on the job, I don't know how you evaluate him, because you can't really. But let me just say this. In this survey, people were very fair. I mean, they want to see what he can do. They don't have bad feelings about him. So, and I think that's good. And I think that's the way it should be, because I'm kind of like that too. Finally, biggest offseason need for the front office after the lockout ends. The number one answer, starting pitching, nearly 50%, Jim. A big bat off the bench or designated hitter prototype, 28%. Relief pitching, 21%, and then the other stuff's just static. It doesn't even get a 1%. So that seems about right. I would be generally in line what I think.
Yeah, I would too. I'm really on the big bat thing. As you all know, I've discussed, go get a DH that can just crush the baseball. Don't guarantee we're getting the DH, but I think 98% of everybody believes that's happening.
So. Yeah.
And I liken it this way. I know the way the game is evaluated is different, but when the Cardinals back in the they had the MV3, I mean, you knew you didn't have a problem scoring runs. Right now, it's adequate, but if you have a lineup that can score runs, I think they got enough arms that they can put together, and they kind of proved it last year. You can go get a couple arms to make things work, but if you have an offense that can mash, guys that can hit home runs and drive in runs, it works. The Braves did it, and it worked. If you're going to do a copycat league type thing, they went and got some bats, and those bats made a difference for them, and they won themselves a World Series.
I think when the Cardinals have their guys in the lineup that they were building around, other than Goldie and Arenado, and I'm talking about the outfielders, and the offense was more than good, and really was one of the best in the National League the second half. The problem is, though, they didn't have enough protection against injuries, and that's true of their hitters, and that's true of their starting pitchers. And so that's my gripe with them, that they leave themselves underprotected, and it's just so stupid because, as they showed with Happ and Lester, it's actually easy to go get some insurance. The Braves showed it, like you said, picking up 3 bats at a relatively cheap cost, and It changed the trajectory of their season, especially after they lost Acuna Jr. That's what bothers me. It isn't the big splash stuff. It's just build your depth. Have backup plans. Have enough people that can step in and do a job. And that's probably my biggest gripe with them. And I don't understand it because those teams that they used to put together, they made sure to find value buys, make value trades, and get that depth reinforced. And somewhere along the way, that's gotten lost, and I don't get it. I just don't get it. So if you have a Tyler O'Neill, incredibly talented, but is he going to have seasons where he can give you 145 games, 150? Harrison Bader, can he continue to hit right-handers where he improved a lot, strikeouts where he improved a lot? I mean, can he do that, or is he going to get hurt? He runs into walls. He makes diving catches. Dylan Carlson, I think, is going to be fine, but they just need more as a backup because when I've talked about this a lot, when those three outfielders started the same game, and it didn't happen enough time, it was like fewer than 70 times. Those three guys were in the same lineup. The Cardinals' offense was absolutely terrific, and the numbers bear that out. And that started long before that 17-game winning streak. So, but the Cardinals are a riddle. I mean, the things they could do to strengthen the team that would not cost a fortune, they haven't done. And I just simply don't understand that. They've gotten away from, pardon the expression, the Cardinal way when it comes to that stuff. And when they got back to it last year by picking up those pitchers, even though the rest of us didn't understand it, but it worked out great, that should have reminded them of how they've lapsed in that area. So anyway.
I'm there with you.
I know.
That way you're not going, I hope Scotty Hurst can help, right? You don't want that.
We'll talk about this next week because we got to get out of here. But I was thinking about this just late at night when I do my thinking and all that stuff. They're almost going to have too many hitters next year. Now, I'm not saying they're great hitters, but they've got a wave of young talent that's reached the shore just about, and I don't know where all these guys are going to go. And I guess that's a pleasant situation to be in, but also don't know how long it'll take them to get acclimated to the big leagues. So, and to do well,
right,
if they can do well.